So either it is the case that you cannot add up different people's suffering and aggregate it like that, or factory farming is literally the worst thing to have ever happened on this planet. So if I kill someone in their sleep, they may not have suffered, but I'm still harming them. I'm depriving them of the life they could have led had I not killed them. This is what I like to call the devil's arithmetic. Kill one guy and take out his organs and save 5 people. You have saved lives on average.
Hi everyone. In this episode, I get a chance to speak with Parsuram Venkatesh. Parsuram is pursuing his PhD in mathematics at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. Parsuram is a vegan and a vegan activist. In this episode, we explore the hard logic and philosophy behind animal rights, the ethics of suffering, and the threshold argument. I had a wonderful time recording this episode, and I hope you guys find this useful. With that, my friends, Parsuram Venkatesh. Thank you so much for coming in on a Saturday. Really appreciate it, and looking forward for this discussion. Inshallah, let's see. So the first thing I wanted to get into, as we discussed offline, is factory farming. So, and I think a lot of people agree. I think if you spoke to a lot of people, I think who are meat eaters, they would tell you that factory farming is something that they object to. But many of them will not, given that assumption and given that statement, right? But they will not take that leap to. I know that factory farming is abhorrent, but I will not. From there, they won't take the leap of jumping into veganism. So what are people missing here, that even though they may know that animal cruelty is bad, or factory farming is bad, and animals should not suffer for, let's say, I don't know, our pleasure of food, why is that then? Why are most people then not able to, including myself, right? Why are we not able to take that leap from knowing it's bad to jumping into veganism? Maybe we can use that as a jumping off point, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, it's a good point to start. I think although people admit that factory farming is bad, one thing I would still like to, before we move on from we all agree factory farming is bad, just highlighting the scale of the problem, because I think, like I mentioned to you offline, one reason I want to talk about veganism rather than so many other issues going on in the world is that in some sense I believe this issue is more important than others, right? Otherwise I would be bringing up those other issues instead. So I want to present a proposition. So either it is the case that you cannot add up different people's suffering and aggregate it like that, or factory farming is literally the worst thing to have ever happened on this planet. Okay, because of the sheer numbers involved. Like, for instance, a lot of birds, sometimes they get bird flu, right? And the way they are culled, is the industry word for it, is that the air ventilation is shut off, and they literally heat stroke to death. It's like a terrible way to go. And just in the past bird flu season, bird flu kind of ravaged the US poultry farms from 22 to 26. Like, it's still ongoing. More than 200 million hens have been culled in this way.
Culled is the way they die?
Culled is the industry term for getting rid of useless birds. So like a bird who is sick is not going to be productive for you, is not going to be a profit generating asset. Correct. And they cannot get anything out of the bird either. So they have to be disposed of in some way. So 200 million birds just in the past 4 years. And these are when you look at the scale of factory farming, this is actually a paltry figure. This is a very small figure among all the other numbers you can think of. And just the number of chickens that are killed every year is in the billions. The number of, if you include fish among all the animals that we consume, it's in the trillions per year. So we are committing multiple holocausts every year, and that's how bad factory farming is. So either you have to give up on aggregating suffering. Like, in a sense, you cannot say that the Holocaust is worse than a single murder, or this is the worst thing to ever happen.
Can I jump in here, if you don't mind? So when you say aggregating suffering, right? One thing that I'm not able to take that leap with you, because I feel like human suffering and animal suffering, I'm kind of making the assumption that there are like degrees of, there should be some difference there, right? Like when, for example, the actual Holocaust versus the, like what animal vegan activists might term as the animal Holocaust. I'm guessing there might be, in terms of degrees of suffering, because of, let's say, the social nature of humans involved, and due to other reasons I cannot probably think of right now. I'm guessing there should be some amount of difference there, or how are you thinking about it? Maybe if you can flesh that out.
So the reason I think why it seems like there should be an intuitive difference between human and animal suffering is we just are closer to human beings than animals. Like, most people are. There are some people who are like, really love animals, maybe even more than humans. But that is merely like your own personal bias. It's just how you happen to be brought up, the culture you happen to be in, that you care about certain people more than others. like although I bring up the Holocaust, it's not like I knew anyone who was affected by it, right? So I don't have relatives who are in the Holocaust. I don't feel that as viscerally. Like even closer to home, like I recently visited Amritsar. There was a partition museum there, and it's horrific what happened, right? Like it's very well done. They've collected letters and small items from families of people who are involved in it. So it really paints a human picture there. But even something this close to home, I did not have any personal connection to that. I don't like feel it in my soul the way maybe a descendant of someone who suffered through that would have felt. So intuitively or on a empathetic level, maybe if we feel closer to humans than to animals. But in terms of whether their suffering is bad per se, like whether we should consider their suffering as a harm, it doesn't matter what my relation was to them. It doesn't matter I didn't know someone who was killed in partition. Their death was just as bad because it was bad for them, right? So I think we are confusing what feels bad for us with what is bad for someone else.
Agreed. Could you also maybe comment on and this is probably very difficult to, and I don't know if it's possible to quantify this, but in terms of suffering as well. I mean, you spoke about your relationship of suffering vis-a-vis other human beings. If we can maybe speculate on and this is my where I lean towards. I would assume that the suffering that, probably wrong, but anyways, for the sake of argument, I would assume that the suffering that humans go through in terms of, I don't know, emotional pain, suffering, physical pain, I'm guessing would be more than what animals experience. I'm already cringing as I make this argument, but if you can take it, if you can maybe take it at face value and maybe.
Okay, but more in what sense? Like some quantitative sense?
Yeah, in like a quantitative sense,
So what makes it worse? Is it our intelligence, or what would you say makes it worse for us?
yeah, I mean, I think the degree, I think the ability to feel certain things, I would assume that intelligence is one dimension, but maybe through various other sensory mechanisms that we are able to feel emotion a little more in depth than other humans could be. If you can maybe take that argument and run with it. Does that make sense to you, or you want me to flesh it out?
I understand where you're coming from. I just would like to tie to the earlier point. So I'm actually on the side of you can't aggregate suffering. So I don't think in a philosophical sense, in a rigorous sense, you can add up people's suffering. So it's not like killing two people is worse, like more bad or double bad than killing one person. It's just the reason it happens to be is that in practice, when this happens, you kill one person and then you kill the next person. So right, that's why killing one person is less bad than killing two people, because after you've killed the one person, now you have a second choice of whether to kill the next person or not. So I think that is what creates the illusion of badness being additive. I don't think it's additive in that manner. And the reason I don't think it's because I don't think it's something measurable. So when we talk about good and bad, these are tethered notions. So things are good or bad for particular individuals with a functional unity. So things can go well or badly for me in my life. Things can go well or badly for you in your life. And things can go well and badly for a chicken in her life. But there are no units. Like for instance, we can talk about how many hairs are on my head versus how many feathers are on a chicken's body. These are just two different numbers, but the unit of measurement is completely different, right? Feathers and hair. So I can say I have more hair on my body than chickens have feathers, but okay, like so what? So in that sense, the pain that a chicken feels, or even the pain that you feel, is a completely different unit than the pain I feel. I don't think these are interpersonally comparable. Things can go well or badly with respect to an individual.
You mean person to person also? You're saying that
Yeah, I don't think you can compare it across people.
Could you maybe say why? Why do you think that? Because I would assume, from where I'm coming from, I would assume that, let's say, if somebody was to tell me to put my hand on a stove, and the pain that I feel when my hand is on that stove, and if they asked you as well to do that, I would assume that the pain we feel is kind of, I mean, I would assume that the pain we feel is similar. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's similar in that the cause of the pain is similar, right?
I would also feel I would also assume that the pain itself is similar. Like, for example, again, maybe a different analogy would be when we were in school. I don't know if you had this experience. I doubt you did. Which is
if you were doing something, let's say if you're talking in class or if you're doing something what you're not supposed to do, you would get beaten up by a rod, not a rod, but like a wooden stick or something like that. And the pain that you would suffer and the pain that your colleague or your classmate would suffer because of he did the same thing, when we talk about it, we would be like, it hurts, or I would assume it's the same pain or similar in the range. So I'm guessing, like, my assumption would be that we feel like similar, even though the variance might be there might be a little bit of variance, but I'm guessing it's on the right spot.
Yes, I agree that the pain is similar in that it creates similar effects. Like, we have to treat the pain as similar between you and me because there's no relevant difference. What I'm saying is that there is no quantity you can measure. Like, for instance, you can take my temperature and you can take your temperature, and these are objectively measurable magnitudes. You can take my weight and you can take your weight. You can add these are objectively measurable magnitudes. There are no objectively measurable magnitudes of utility or welfare or pain.
That's fair.
So that is the sense in which it's not additive. It's not a measure. Pain is bad, and the badness of pain I experience from my first person perspective, right? And because I experience this pain and I recognize the symmetry between us in that you are also a being in the world, for whom things can go well or badly, I understand that your pain is also bad. And similarly, I understand that the chicken's pain is also bad because that is also a functional unity for whom things can go well or badly. It is a creature in the world for whom things can go well or badly. So at that, now notice that at this level, we've come to the root of why we ought to think that pain is bad for others, right? And nowhere in this discussion was it ever relevant whether you are smarter than me or whether I'm smarter than you. So there is no trait, the varying of which changes the badness of this pain, because like it's not an objectively measurable magnitude that can vary with other factors, right? The grounds for the badness of pain are kind of absolute. It doesn't admit of degrees. Like, pain is bad. You can say more pain is worse because whatever pain you're feeling, I can add more pain to it. But I cannot double your pain or increase it by 1% in any meaningful sense. We can, of course, talk about this, but it's very loose and non-rigorous language.
Well, that's fair. But so are you taking that? I agree with you. And so are you taking that as like a base for you to jump to the point of because suffering is bad, whether it's human or any other creature, and it doesn't really matter if they are conscious, non-conscious, if they are smart or not smart. The idea that a being is suffering is in itself reason enough not do what we're doing. Is that fair?
Yes, I would add that suffering is one of the ways in which you can harm someone. So if I kill someone in their sleep, they may not have suffered, but I'm still harming them. I'm depriving them of the life they could have led had I not killed them. So suffering is not the only way in which someone can be harmed. It's one of the ways in which they can be harmed.
So agreed. So we are on the same page that we should not make animals suffer or harm animals in that way. Now, if I may use that as a jumping point to like veganism per se, why do you think most people are not able to, including myself, right? Like as mentioned, like what is the blocker here? Like what is the blocker that does not allow people? If I can draw, maybe this is a digression, but if I can draw another example here, is generally when people see other human beings mistreating another animal, let's say dogs or any other animal, they generally do sympathize and jump in and maybe
it's not just human beings mistreating. Like, have you seen the videos of Punch the monkey? Like, we feel bad even when other animals. So he's a monkey in a zoo. He was abandoned by his mother, and so they gave him like an orangutan plush toy which he clings to and all. And the other monkeys always bully him, and he runs back and grabs his. So everyone on the internet is like, "Oh my God, poor monkey is being bullied." So it's not just when humans are mistreating an animal. Even when animals are mistreating each other, we feel bad about it.
So one thing is even though I think most of the eggs that I consume come from, let's say, those are white eggs, so I'm guessing they're factory farmed, and even the chickens that I consume probably are factory farmed.
Almost surely, it's like 99.9% of meat is factory farmed.
Almost certainly. Yeah. One thing for me personally is that one is I don't think about it. Like, it doesn't occur to me when I'm buying my chicken that this is coming from a factory farm chicken. Nor do I know the reasons behind it. The second part is it is so ubiquitous, right? Like, I mean, doesn't really. I don't feel that guilt on a day-to-day basis. I don't feel that guilt on a day-to-day basis that the journey of that chicken coming to my plate had such a gruesome journey. I think these two majorly. I think these may be my own reasons why I've not taken that leap. But any speculation on why do you think?
Yeah, so I'm not very good at reading people, so I don't want to speculate. But on the guild point, I would just like to introduce a prop. This is the only prop I brought really. So this is a leather notebook. Like it's proper leather. I bought this before I went vegan, and the reason I brought this is because
Leather is cows.
yeah, this is like real proper a dead cow skin.
That's cows. Okay, yeah.
Get into this, and I have not thrown it away despite having gone vegan. The reason I brought this to like demonstrate is that I'm not here like trying to guilt trip people. It's just because, like I said, most people don't think about it. Like when I bought this, I wasn't really thinking, oh, this is a dead cow's skin that I'm buying. I just bought it because it looked nice. I liked the notebook that was inside, and I just bought it. And now that I have bought it, I can't do anything about it, right? Like me throwing this away does not change the fact that the cow was killed to get the leather. So yes, at this point, I wouldn't say that to any people who want to go vegan, you don't have to guilt yourself about the life you were living. It's just I'm just trying to present what is the rational thing to do going forward. Yeah? Like what is ethics about? It's just about whatever culture, whatever upbringing you have that has brought you to this point. It is always possible to step back and say, okay, given all my desires, I want to do this, I want to do that. This feels good, this feels that, and it feels like I should do this. You can always step back and say, but should I really do that? Right? This is the essence of rational choice. Like, can I? Is it really okay for me to do X? So what I'm saying is, it is. I'm trying to make the case that when you ask yourself the question, is it really permissible to do X, where X is continuing to buy from like a factory farm or continuing to support animal farming? I would say the answer is no. Like just rationally, the answer is no. You should not continue to do this, and the reason is because when you're living in a market economy, as a consumer, you are the one determining the course of production. Ultimately, you are the one determining the course of production. If an entrepreneur does not satisfy consumer demand, he'll go bankrupt and another one will take his place. So the ultimate determinant of why these animals are brought into existence in the first place and treated the way they are is your consumer behavior. And so this is kind of the crux of the case for veganism. Like your actions do have an impact. They have very obvious and demonstrable impact. And therefore, you ought to change your actions.
But if I can push back, I mean, in the sense that for anybody, the scale that you mentioned, right, in the beginning, chickens outnumber humans 1:3, if I'm not wrong. And I think fishes, again, more than that, much higher. So when you're talking about that scale and the number of meat eaters there are, I think, not sure in India, but globally, China is a major example as well. When you're talking about that scale, I think many people might assume that the actions that they are taking may not really move the scale, right? Even when you talk about their actions will move, the economic decisions that companies might make or other consumers might make. How should they think about it? Like, I mean,
so they should understand that marginal actions have marginal impacts. Like, yes, your action on the margin will have effects on production, but on the margin, like me going vegan did not end factory farming yesterday, right? But my actions, my choices to not buy chicken at a regular basis, maybe in a year I would have bought some X number of chickens. This is a signal this is a market signal to entrepreneurs that reduces the amount of chickens that would have otherwise been born into existence and slaughtered. So it reduces the number of rights violations. It may not eliminate them completely. On the flip side, if I choose to start consuming chicken, that means there will be chickens born into this world and killed at a fraction of their lifespan because of me. And the argument for this is it's quite cool actually. It's a threshold argument, and essentially all arguments around. So this was an ongoing debate in philosophy papers as well. Like, do our actions really have an impact? And the consensus right now seems to be yeah. So the basic logic goes like this. So it may be true that as an individual you don't move the needle, but there is some threshold at which the needle will be moved, right? Like if a grocery store consistently sees that their sales of chicken are going down, they'll order less on the next round. and this signal eventually moves its way up the economy. Now, suppose that threshold is n. Now, we'll see the cool thing about this argument is that the magnitude of n doesn't really matter. You'll see how. So, suppose the threshold is n. As a consumer, I don't know where I am on that threshold, right? I have no information. So, the only thing I can rationally do is estimate my position as 1 by n. I can be any one of these 1 by n slots. If I am at the 1 by nth slot, n more chickens will be killed because of me. If I'm in any other slot, okay, 0 will be killed because of me. But if you do the expected value calculation, the probability of being the one triggering the threshold event may be only 1 by n, but the magnitude of the threshold event is n. So the expected impact of your actions is 1 by n into n, and it cancels out, and the expected value of buying one chicken is exactly one chicken more brought into existence and slaughtered. So although the impact of your actions is probabilistic and like the causal chain is distant, it's a robust causal chain. Like just because you don't immediately see the consequences of your actions doesn't mean they aren't there. They're just hidden from you, right? Like if you go into the jungle and actually kill an animal, clearly that causal chain is very direct. But this causal chain, although it's indirect, is just as real. So I think it's just a bias of our ancestral environment. Like we were only focused on immediate consequences of our actions. But if you, like I said, when you the essence of morality is like stepping back from yourself at any given moment and asking yourself, okay, is this really the right thing to do? If you can step back from it and okay, is this really the right thing to do? Then you have to come to the conclusion that no, it's not. Because if you grant that animals deserve some moral consideration, and we can get to like what is the nature of that moral consideration, right? But if you agree that animals deserve some moral consideration, then clearly factory farming or buying products from factory farms is not morally permissible.
So would you be okay with a case where people stop? Let's assume tomorrow they hear this podcast and tomorrow everybody just decides that they are not going to buy any products from factory farming. Nobel prizes will be coming across our way. But beyond that, I wanted to check whether will you be okay with? I'm sure you've heard this argument as well, which is will you be okay with scenarios where these animals are not bred, but they are either from regional homegrown chickens or taken care of chickens, or not only chickens but any other animals that people generally eat, pigs, mutton, etc. So would you be okay with that case where they are not, I mean, they've had a very good life, either let's assume the best case scenario for now, just to make our argument, where these they get the best facilities, they are they get the best food, and they lead a good life. Let's assume acres of land where they get to wander around, play their hide and seek games with their other chicklets and all that, and at the end of life, at the end of a fruitful life, and now let's also assume they have a quote unquote peaceful death. Would you be okay? Like, is that okay then that we'll be able to consume these animals,
eating happy animals
per se? Is that how do you kind of?
Yeah, so today I'd like to draw an analogy. So this is why I brought up earlier that suffering is not the only form of harm. So suppose if we go on a date and I mix something in your drink and take you back and you're unconscious and I violate you, that may not cause suffering because you're not conscious during the experience, but it's still harm. Or like I said, if I kill you in your sleep, it's still causing you harm because you're not getting to experience the rest of your life.
No, but here in my analogy that I gave you, this was happening at the end of life. I mean, assuming.
And if end of life means
like the average expectancy of let's say the average expectancy of humans is 80. So you're killing them. Let's say they see death. Even after they are dead, also we can probably consume them, right? Assuming let's assume the case where they've had a fruitful life and then they die due to natural causes, diabetes or whatever, diabetes equivalent of chicken land. They die because of that. Then you consume them.
Yeah, okay. I guess that's technically a loophole, but if you look at the ages at which we actually kill animals, like cows live to 20, 25 years, they're killed at 5. Chickens are killed at 90 days. They can live a couple of years.
This is factory farming case, right?
But no, even the non-factor, it doesn't make economic sense to raise chickens beyond that point. Once a chicken has grown as large as it's going to get, it's going to give you all the meat that you're going to get out of it ever in the rest of its life. So why would you keep it for beyond that time? Right? The growth of meat on a chicken's body is kind of increasing and then it plateaus, right? Why would you waste your time in this plateau?
But so here, you slightly confused me actually, because my assumption was that you would be that you will be against eating animals no matter what. But is it fair that
There are loopholes. Like if I go and there's like a rat that was ran over by a car, I didn't kill it. I have no ethical objection with someone like taking that rat and cooking it up and eating it. Like I have a health objection. Like maybe don't do that. You will fall. You fall ill.
So in the natural case where let's say a deer was found due to as a roadkill or but even other cases where let's say again my own example, but not the extreme one, but a general one where a chicken was raised in a farm and then some reason it died. So you don't have an objection there, like where it's had its natural course, where it was born, it had a natural course of life, and then it died, and now it's okay for the owner or whatever it is to consume them.
Yeah, so there's this vegan activist, Gary Yourofsky. Like he was the one who kind of radicalized. I was already vegan by the time I discovered him, but he kind of really radicalized me into like really caring about the issue. He talks about an experience he had, like kind of similar. So there's a sanctuary called Sasha Farms in the US. I don't exactly know where it is, but he used to volunteer there at the sanctuary, and there was this old sheep. And one day they saw the sheep had gone out into the pasture, and they realized, okay, something is wrong. This is not like normal behavior for him. And they went, and by the time they got there, he had already passed away peacefully. And when they discovered this, they didn't speak to each other. They just took out shovels, dug it up, and buried it, right? And so later, while recounting the story, Gary Yourofsky says, technically we could have had a barbecue that day. We could have knitted wool sweaters and like made mittens out of whatever. It would have been there would have been nothing wrong with it. But like in the moment, we just did what felt right. Like we saw a dead body and we like gave it the respect it deserved because it was. So I don't really. I'm not a very sentimental guy, so like although I see the sentiment in that story, I'm like, yeah, technically I wouldn't have had an ethical objection with them eating.
Having a barbecue.
As well. Yeah, but the reality is that this is never going to be a viable solution unless you grant that animals have rights. So this is why we have to come to like what is the nature of our moral obligation to animals, and the other possible like
what is the nature of our moral obligation to animals? Do you want to elaborate on that?
Okay, sure. So the reason I think that animals have moral consideration or deserve moral consideration from us is because we have this is another way of saying it. We have duties towards animals. The root of these duties is essentially that things can go. I recognize that things can go well or better, well or worse for me. As an animistic being, like the reason things can go well or worse for me is that I can have experiences where things are better or worse, and there are certain things that are good for me and the things that are bad for me. It would be bad if I fell ill. It's good if I get to eat good food, etc., etc. And the grounds of these valenced experiences, valence just meaning having the value of being good or bad. The grounds of these valenced experiences are also present in animals, and they're also present in other human beings, and so on. So rationally, I cannot, when I act on my desires, I cannot will that it is permissible to satisfy these desires while also depriving someone else of the right to satisfy. Because that is the ground. Like rationally, like if I agree that it's permissible for me to do this, I cannot say that it's impermissible for someone else to do it. This creates certain constraints on permissible actions.
This is where I'm not able to be on the same page as you are, which is so the way I'm thinking about this is, right, when you say the experiences that I or you can have and I should not be able to deprive those to other beings as well. I agree with that part, but I somehow also place humans at a much higher ground than any other being. I would assume that humans have much.
Sure. So I'm not arguing for equality here. I'm not saying humans are the same as other animals. In some respects, we are. Obviously, in some respects, we're not. We're only animals that has such a developed culture and language and so on. There are certain things that set us apart as a species for sure, but not all members of our species, right? And this is called like the scope, the argument from species overlap. Like there is no clear trait that selects all humans and only humans.
Elaborate.
So if you say intelligence, for instance, there are pigs and so on are smarter than a 1-year-old is. So there is no trait, that can select exactly humans. Like the boundary is kind of fuzzy, right? So the idea being that whatever rights we would, like the way we kind of we can kind of battle test what kind of norms are applicable to animals, is that how would we treat a relevantly similar human in the same situations? Like it's not okay to just cut an infant's throat and drink its blood, right? And so it's not okay to do that to animals as well. So they have certain what are called pro tanto rights to their bodily autonomy. Like you cannot just you can of course like vaccinate the kid and all, even if the kid is crying, because that's for the kid's own good. So we can be paternalistic towards animals and kind of quote unquote force upon them things that are good for them, but they have to be really good for them. It cannot be an excuse to do it because it's good for us. So you have to think about it from their perspective. Like you cannot force your child to do something because you would like your child to do that. It has to be in a sense good for the child. You're kind of a guardian over the child. And note that this is a very asymmetric obligation, right? Children don't have the obligation towards us. There's no sense in which a child is obligated to do something for me or obligated to refrain from doing something to me. So they are in the same situation as animals. So we are, you and me and like other many human beings are what are called moral agents. Like we have the capacity for making moral choices. But there are also moral patients who are not moral agents. By moral patients, I mean someone who is the receiver of some duty. So all duties are owed by someone to someone. It can be to someone in general, like I owe a general duty to humanity to not interfere in their affairs, if they are doing permissible actions, for instance. But every duty has to be from someone to someone. But it is not necessary that receivers of duties also have duties towards other people. Because clearly, children don't have duties towards others. But of course, we still have duties towards children. So I think similarly, we have a basic duty towards animals of non-interference. Like, don't mess with their lives for no reason. No reason is a bit vague, but essentially, they have a right to bodily autonomy that should not be violated unless it's justified. Like if a bear is attacking me, I can obviously shoot it dead. But the chicken never did anything to me. I have no right to go and cut its throat.
The pleasure of food is not a sufficient reason.
No, it would not be a sufficient reason in the case of the species overlap humans. So it can't be the case for animals either.
What if it's a case where the amount of pleasure I receive from eating meat is so high? Still.
Yeah, so I think it's not additive. Like it's not measurable in that sense. What I'm talking about is that there are certain constraints on behavior that don't come about as merely a weighting of reasons. Like if you're thinking of say two different business ventures, you could argue, okay, this one you'll have a large amount of consumers who will contribute a little amount every day, and this project will generate so and so revenue on these dates. You can do whatever the discounted cash flow analysis, figure out what the present value is. This is another business venture with like a different pattern of revenues and expenditures. You can figure out, okay, so which one should I invest in and so on. But this is not the same with these kind of deontic reasons, right? There are just some things that you cannot do to others, no matter how much you would like to. So the essence of morality is like, what are the things I have to do, regardless of how I feel, like regardless of what my particular feelings in the moment are. There are certain things I cannot do. I cannot go and stab people. I cannot go hit them for no reason. And so there are certain things that no, you just can't do, regardless of how much you would quote unquote like to. So these are the duties we owe to animals. The simple duty of non-interference. So in particular, we cannot be breeding them for our pleasure, because that's I think the root of the problem. If we grant them enough bodily autonomy that you can't just go rape them, then we cannot forcibly breed them into existence, and that's the root cause of the evil that the animal system is able to sustain.
So when you talk to, I don't know if you do this, but when you talk to people who might be receptive to these arguments of veganism, right? Like to not eat meat or to not eat factory farm meat. What in your experience generally tends to be the most persuasive argument, and when are people generally more open-minded to kind of not only receive the arguments but also take action on those? Have you noticed any patterns or things like that?
Yeah, so this is not a pattern I like. So, I think people should appreciate my honesty, but I have found it much easier to talk to vegetarians because they're kind of almost there. Like a lot of vegetarians are vegetarians for ethical reasons. And so once they figure out the reality of meat, and not by a lot, I don't mean like half.
Yeah,
I mean like 5%, 10%. But comparatively, that's a much larger figure than any other population. So most of the vegans I know are former vegetarians. No, I was not one. Although I was raised vegetarian, I was not always a vegetarian. Like I said, I have leather. I used to eat. I've eaten all kinds of meat.
But I think vegetarians are they're not allowed to eat meat, but I think they're allowed to buy leather products, etc.
Yeah, that's true. Vegetarianism is more of a diet, but there are also ethical vegetarians. There are people who
Very few, I would assume. I've never heard anyone say I'm an ethical vegetarian. Very, very rarely. I mean, generally it's a cultural, it's a upbringing thing.
Typically because, like you said, they haven't thought about it much. So, like the reason they tell themselves they are not eating meat is that they probably don't want to do that to animals. That's also the reason. Like many people who are raised vegetarian, even when they leave home, they don't just go and eat meat, right? So there's something stopping them. And I mean, many of the cases, it is the fact that it's a dead animal, it's a corpse on your plate that they don't want to eat. So, like, I do know people who are like this, and they have been the easiest to convince because once you show them the truth of the other animal products and show, like, it's basically the same as meat. Like, so if meat is unjustified, of course, this is unjustified.
When you say the truth of whenever people try to kind of talk about veganism or ask people to kind of give up meat, generally it's an emotional guilt argument. I mean, it's not more of an argument, generally it's emotional guilt. The reason I say this is because if you look at, let's say, at least some of the lectures that I've seen online, plus even my own experience of, let's say, if you go to MG Road, right, in Bangalore, you will, I don't know if it still happens, but it used to happen that you would have like a group of students or people who would show like horrific images while you were walking with your date and the flower in your hand.
Oh, now we do it in Indranagar.
Oh, you're part of it. Achha, I'm so sorry. Stop me if I'm saying anything wrong here. But what I've seen is, they would carry like horrific images of like, let's say, cows, pregnant cows being dead, or the way they are.
Which is all true, by the way.
Which is all true. No. Which is all true. Nothing against that. But I'm just saying the way you reach out to people is by not you. I'm so sorry. The way they reach out to people is. It's more of a guilt.
No, I agree where you're going. Can I just offer some defense?
Go for it.
Which is that when you're on the street and you want to communicate a message quickly to people, you have to use high leverage, communicative.
Does that work though? I mean, I would assume, like, the reason I asked you that is I would assume that would backfire, because my own personal thinking on that was...
See, but realistically, is someone really going to say, oh, I saw a vegan on the street, I'm going to eat double the meat tonight? Like, people make that joke, but do they actually do it?
And no, I mean, I doubt it. I agree with that. I doubt it. But I don't know how effective...
So it may not be effective on those people. Like the strategy, any kind of strategy to reach out to people, you have to be specific with your demographic, right? You cannot there is no such thing as a uniform net, because those strategies are usually quite ineffective. So the reason this works is because it's monotonic. What I mean by that is there are some people whom it won't affect and they will just remain as they were. But there is a small group of people who are affected powerfully and they will change because of it. Right? The reason street outreach still happens is because it does work in getting people to change their behavior. It may not work in the percentage terms, but it's an effective strategy, I would say. Like in practice, it is effective. Like I have had conversations with people who, like I said, many of them happen to be vegetarians. When I tell them what the reality of dairy is and how dairy is basically the same as meat, so the same reasons why you would not consume meat are also the same reasons why you shouldn't consume dairy, why you shouldn't go to zoos, circuses, buy wool, silk, leather, etc. So
sorry, just to be clear on the circus argument and all that, it's you're by buying a circus ticket, you're kind of not accelerating, but you are supporting the pain that animals are put through. Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Okay.
So I would say in general, in a capitalist economy, if you are paying for something you are implicitly saying with your thing that more of this, give me more, right? So every time you make a payment to a business to do something related to animals, you're saying do more of this. The one exception I will say is products that are tested on animals. Like I still think you shouldn't support companies that do animal testing, but I think that obligation is not as strong as the one for meat, because they will test on a certain number of animals regardless. The number of animals that get tested on is not related to the volume of consumer demand, right? So I could be wrong about this empirical point. If this is wrong, then I will also be against this. But the point is, they will test on a certain number of animals regardless. Doesn't matter whether one product sells or 1,000. So the volume of consumption is not driving the number of rights violations that occur.
But if I can push you on the animal testing part, are you also against? I don't want to make this personal, but I mean, just to get your thoughts as well. Are you also against? I mean, there are cases where animal testing, leads to cures of, let's say, certain diseases, and they do testing of certain pharmaceuticals, or they do testing of certain medicines to animals before they kind of. So should that also be put to a stop? Like, here is where I can clearly, I don't articulate, not articulate, but here I can clearly see the value of, let's say there's a stage 4, huge assumption here. Let's say assuming there's a stage 4 breast cancer woman out there, and let's say some animal testing, they test it on these animals, but they are able to find a cure for these diseases. I would assume they should probably do it. For here in this case, is one person, but also going forward, now the numerous amount of lives that can be saved, or the suffering that can be alleviated because of that, I would assume would kind of supersede.
Have you heard this factoid that the human body is like 70% water?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Do you know how we got to know this?
Negative.
The Japanese had a unit, I think 731 or something, that they went into China, and the Imperial Japan was like a monstrous regime. They would experiment on people and like literally like kind of fry the water out of them, and then measure before and after, and that's how the human body, that's 70% water by weight.
I did not know that. Okay, huh?
So if animal testing, so in this world, like we don't test on humans the way we do on animals. And when Japan did it, everyone is horrified. Everyone hears this story, and Japan is not kawaii at all. It was a monstrous regime, right? So if animal testing did not exist, and someone recommended this, hey, we're just gonna cut animals open and like figure out what's happening inside their bodies, and like send them to space with no plans to bring them back. Even if they do come back, we'll just kill them. If we lived in a world where animal testing did not exist, and we figured out, okay, does this drug work? There are many methods you could think of, like in silico trials, or maybe you test it on volunteering human subjects and so on. Someone brought up, hey, pick up a cat from the street and just like inject it with this and just see what happens, and then kill it 2 days later. People would think you were psychopathic.
Agreed. No,
See, the only reason we accept animal testing as normal is because it's the status quo. So it's just status quo bias. We would not accept this being done to human beings. We are only accepting it being done to animals because.
That is true, but I mean, that is true, but somehow I'm still not there. Like, I mean, assuming that a drug can be successfully, again, I don't know the specifics of this. Like, I don't know the specifics of the situation of like, do animal testing really provide meaningful benefits to? I don't know.
That is also heavily disputed. Like most drugs that go through animal trials, the animal trials are completely wasteful. They're a drain.
Exactly. So I don't know the specifics of like, how effective.
My point was that even assuming that they are effective, which they are not, even assuming that, there's no justification. So like, what I'm trying to make a stronger point, that animal testing is bad because it violates the rights of animals, not based on whatever scientific cred it has.
Like here, again, let's make the assumption that they're effective for argument's sake. But here, I think the way I would think about it is, here I think I would really supersede human lives over animal tested lives. Like animals that are used for animal testing, but again, let's just broaden that to animals, where I would just assume that the lives that we could save if we were testing it on animals, the human lives that we could save if we were testing on animals, I would kind of take that as like more of a like the death of animals is okay. I'm so sorry, is okay if we are able to serve, like if we are able to save, like.
This is what I like to call the devil's arithmetic.
Okay.
It's a similar case as the forced organ donor, right? You can kill one guy and take out his organs and save 5 people. You have saved lives on average.
No, that's fair. No. But here, I don't know if I'll be comfortable with that. Maybe I would be comfortable with humans. That's a separate point. But let's say, for example, let's make the argument that we won't let it. We won't. Again, on humans, it's not a bad. I mean, if they volunteer, it's probably not a bad thing.
Yeah, that I think is the ultimate solution. Either you have lab grown organs, or you have humans who you pay enough to test on. And this will force both the scientists to be more careful with what they inject into humans, because the insurance premiums will go through the roof. And it'll also lead to more effective drugs, because what you ultimately want is things that are good for humans, right? Things that work on humans. You don't want things that work in rats but not on humans. What's the point?
Yeah. But here we've made the assumption that it works. If the testing goes through animals and it does well, it does do well in humans as well. But you are still not buying. You still would not want that case where even in that
stronger position, I would just like to highlight that that is not the world we live in. So in the world we do live in, that's kind of a moot point. Like whether or not you want to accept animal testing in that alternate world where it really is effective, it's I think that will be a separate discussion unto itself. I recognize that it's a more complicated issue, not in the sense of the logic, but I think just because of the preconceptions we have, it will take a long time to unpack that.
No worries.
But in the world we live in, morality is ultimately a practical matter. It is ultimately about what we have to do, and there are 2 ways in which I don't really focus on this issue. One is the causal efficacy. Like in this case, I think the causal inefficacy argument does work. Like my decision to not take a medicine is not going to change the fact that they're going to continue testing on animals. That has to be a political fight. Like currently, there's a lab in the US, Ridglan. I don't know how to pronounce it. RIDGLAN. So some rescuers recently won a right to rescue trial because these beagles. The reason they use beagles, it's really messed up. Because beagles are very friendly, and because beagles are very trusting. So we take the most trusting animals, we take the ones that will be the most friendly, who will give us the least amount of pushback, and we use them to test our stuff on. So there were some beagles the beagles were really being mistreated at Ridglan farms, and some activists broke in and committed some random acts of compassion and kindness and rescued these beagles. And they recently won in the trial. They were declared not guilty of theft of the beagles. So. My point being that that's the kind of action required to tackle the animal testing issue. You need either direct action or political action to tackle this issue. The issues of animal agriculture, on the other hand, are things that we as consumers can have direct impact on. So although I would take the radical position on animal testing and animal liberation now, but the message I want to convey to people is that what can you do right now? There are many things in the world you don't have that much influence over, but this is something you really do.
Again, going back to the discussion that you have with people, any idea on the relapse rate? Like how many of them talk? How many of them convert? But let's say, I don't know, on that birthday weekend or
that would be an interesting question. I would love to have the data on that. Unfortunately, I just don't.
I think we've already discussed that factory farming is bad, but if I can go back one more time on the economic side, right? I think a lot of people may not be able to consume meat, if it was not. I'm cringing again as I make this argument. I'm so sorry, but
so factory farming. If not for factory farming, most people wouldn't be eating meat.
It gets very, very expensive, right? Even things like I think eggs, milk, your meat just gets very, very expensive. I don't know. Wouldn't that be a bad thing?
Why would that be a bad thing? So you're saying, meat would be more expensive. People would be consuming less of it. I'm saying yes, great.
I'm saying great, yes, but also, don't you see any dietary implications of that? People consuming, less protein maybe, or less calcium. Etc. I don't know. Don't you feel that? I don't know.
No, I don't think that necessarily follows, because ultimately all nutrients come from the sun or the soil. So I'd recommend everyone follow Michael Greger at Nutrition Facts veganism.org. Like he has a website where he just puts up all the latest research. Although he himself is plant-based, he doesn't advertise it as plant-based. He says this is what the evidence shows. And all the nutrients come from the sun or the soil. Now, the one nutrient that vegans are told to like supplement is B12, because typically animals are fed B12 supplements that meat eaters then consume. So if we can skip the middleman, if we can just take the B12 supplement ourselves, that's the only real deficiency that a vegan might face relative to like an omnivorous diet. So, like, of course, omnivorous diets can also be deficient if not planned properly. Vegan diets are not, unique in being possibly deficient. The vegan diet, it's more like, or rather, the plant-based diet, I'd like to say, because veganism is more about the philosophy of animal rights in general. The plant-based is about diet specifically. Although, even plant-based is technically wrong because we do eat fungi as well. Again, technically, that different biological family, right? So plant and fungi based, but it doesn't roll off the tongue as well. Right?
Okay.
So the yeah, exactly. So the one thing you need to supplement is B12, D3 also, but that is more general. Again, even omnivorous people can be deficient in those. So then on the nutritional side, in today's day and age, there is no reason to be consuming animal products. And it's not like B12 supplements are much more expensive. If you are buying meat and getting your B12 through that, and you want to switch over to B12 supplement to substitute it, it's going to be orders of magnitude cheaper. Like the amount of chicken you need to consume to get the RDA for B12 is definitely much more expensive than a B12 supplement. So it cannot be a reason to give up meat that you may not get B12, because the supplement is actually cheaper than eating the meat for it. Okay. So on the economic side, I don't think there necessarily has to be any dietary implications. Now, I cannot control what people do with their own lives, right? And people can have a poorly planned diet. You could, Oreos are vegan, so you could have a diet consisting only of Maggie and Oreos, be 100% vegan, and like die in 5 years or something, I guess. So it's yeah, I'm sure. So it's not. A vegan diet is not like a magic bullet, but neither is it a poison pill. So it really depends on how you do it, which is true for any diet. Like you have to watch what you eat. And on the flip side, like when it's very funny that people say this and then they'll go to McDonald's and Burger King and eat. Like, you're not eating this for nutrition. Come on. Who are you kidding?
Any specific products that you would like to recommend that maybe you consume or that you have found very helpful as a vegan, that anyone looking to experiment with anyone looking to experiment with this diet, right, could probably maybe use that as a first step maybe?
Yeah, so there's this thing, Vegan Dukan, they deliver in Bangalore mainly, but also other cities in India. Like I have been hooked on their curd and tofu recently, because this is like the creamiest tofu they have. Like, this is not an advertisement; they're not paying me. I'm just shouting it from the rooftops because I love the product. So that's amazing, and it covers your protein, calcium, your two main things that like already strikes out. And any B12 supplement, just take any B12 supplement that from a reputed thing. I don't want to like say brands and all, but if you're going vegan, or even if you're not really, you should be consuming B12, because even in India at least the meat is not very well supplemented with B12. So even when I was not a vegan, I was slightly deficient in B12. Okay. Like I was getting some, but not. I was like barely getting the RDA or something. So I was taking a B12 supplement since before going vegan in any case. So that is something I think everyone should do in any case.
I want to stop here. Anything else I should probably bring up before we close?
Yeah, so if you're considering going vegan, especially if you're living in India, there's this guy, Arvind. He has his YouTube channel is called Arvind Animal Activist. And you can just look up, like, he has this ultimate guide to being vegan in India, where he just goes through all the practical steps, like what do you actually have to do to, live according to your values. And I think this is really important. Like people... nowhere will people bring up ethical relativism faster than when you bring up veganism, right? Like as soon as like the veganism, the word enters the atmosphere, but morality is subjective. And like, okay, morality may be subjective. I don't agree, but like we don't have to have that discussion. But okay, it may be subjective, but what is your morality? Like it can be differ from person to person, but every person has one, right? So what is your morality? Does your morality really allow you to be torturing puppies in your basement because you like the way they scream? If not, then what is the morally relevant distinction between that scenario and buying meat, right? And if you agree that if you agree that something is horrific, why would you pay it so that more of it happens? And more of it does happen. Like unless you're living in a communist country where the government controls all production, your consumer behavior has a definite impact on markets. It has a definite impact on production decisions because entrepreneurs get where they are based on their ability to anticipate consumer demand, right? And consumer demand does move the market. So don't think that your actions don't have consequences. That vegan ice cream is already better than non-vegan ice cream. So there's this outlet Pibbles, again, like free advertising for them because I love that bakery so much. It's completely plant-based. It's next to the metro station in Indiranagar.
Okay. Pebbles.
And Pibbles.
Pibbles,
So they used to be called plant-based edibles, but people called they're getting the wrong idea, so they changed their name to Pibbles.
Okay.
It is the best ice cream I've had in Bangalore, and I'm not saying it's the best vegan ice cream. I'm saying it is the best ice cream that I've had in Bangalore. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Over Corner House.
Yeah, over Corn House, all these places. No, Pibbles is better ice cream, despite being ethical. So like I just like to say that being vegan doesn't have to be a sacrifice. It's not. You're not giving up anything. You just stop taking what was not yours in the first place, right? And so it's not. You're not living as an ascetic just because you're vegan. You can still have ice cream. You can still have cake. You can enjoy life and still be vegan.
Sorry, one last question before you close, which is wanted to ask you, as a vegan, do you always have to? So when I'm making my food choices, right? I hate to say this, but I generally don't have to think about any. Maybe that's why I'm such a immoral person, but I generally don't exercise any judgment in that sense, in the sense that like I'm not going through like a moral like checklist when I'm making decisions. Do you have to like let's say there are days where there are people who stress eat, right? Who either if they're having like a really bad day might order like a McDonald's burger or some burger or something like that, whatever dish you might think of. Do you have to exercise like a lot of judgment now and then, like, or how is that, like, or is that like once assuming let's say 6 months in your 6 months in your 6 months in your vegan diet, and after 6 months you really don't have to think about it? Like, can you walk us through that? Like,
so when I first went vegan, it was like February last year, and I intended to do it like give it a good shot for a month just to see whether it's actually difficult. And within 2 weeks I realized it wasn't difficult and I should continue doing this for the rest of my life. So it was never like, again, I don't go through like a checklist every time I order. It's just, yeah, that's the default setting. Like you don't think twice about not ordering chicken.
cool, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through all the reasons why current meat eaters should probably look into at least their morality and maybe consider making different choices. So thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.